Hello, everyone.
Hey, Angela, how
Hello,
are
how are
you?
you? I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good.
Happy.
Hello,
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well.
All right. Happy holidays, everybody.
You too.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We'll give folks a few minutes to hop on. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're waiting to meet our quorum and we'll get started.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ebony.
Peace, Eliza.
Hey, Avina. Saw your email. All right, welcome everybody. We have quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm calling this December 13th, 2023 full COC meeting to order. Just as a reminder before we get started, we invite all COC members to be a part of the discussion. And then the voting items will just be for HSEC members. So if you're not an HSEC member, you don't need to be worrying about voting, but please feel free to join our discussion today. At the top of each meeting, we have a practice of reading our goals, and I'll be doing that today. But while I'm doing that, it would be great to hear from some of you or all of you in the chat. I've done something similar before, but I think because we have a full COC, it would be great to hear from folks that may not be attending other meetings. So let us know in the chat what motivates you to be a part of this work. We can get to know each other a little bit by sharing with each other in the chat, and we'll read our goals. Our first goal is finish the job of ending chronic homelessness. Second, prevent and end veterans homelessness. Third, prevent and end homelessness for families, youth, and children. And fourth, set a path to ending all types of homelessness. Some housekeeping pieces to be aware of. Check the chat to fill out the sign-in form. That should populate in the next couple minutes again, or for the first time into the chat. So please take a second to sign in for us. And that's very helpful for the notes and to know that you are here. Additionally, please stay muted unless you're coming off mute to speak. If you've got a question, raise your virtual hand and we'll get to you. If you put it in the chat, we'll also have folks from our community development team monitoring that as well. So we want to make sure we capture those items. All right. I did not get notice that we had any public comment. Is that still the case, Melissa? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly.
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Is anyone here today that would like to offer a public comment? Okay, we'll move on to approval of minutes. HSEC members should have received the November minutes via email from the Durham Opening Doors email the afternoon of December 6th. Opening the floor for any edits or corrections that are needed. Hearing none, I will take a motion to approve the minutes for our November 2023 HSAC meeting.
This is Angela Holmes. I like to make a motion to accept the minutes as stand.
This
Thanks.
is Renee Vaughn, second.
Great. The first from Angela Holmes, a second from Renee Vaughn. Please vote in the chat yes, or no, or abstain. Great. Our November minutes are approved. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So we're moving right along to our policy and planning quarterly report, and that will be given to us by our policy and planning chair, Sharita. This is information only. Sharita, have you joined us? I'm looking for you.
I don't see Sharita on the call just yet.
Okay.
Colin, are you giving me updates today, or should we go to the next agenda item for now?
It's up to you. I can give a brief update on what's been going on in policy and planning if you'd like. Big things we've been looking at is grievance policy, looking at the PIT count, talking through identifying gaps in services and sort of making some recommendations on next steps. A big piece that we've been tackling lately has also been winter shelter, and a small group has been working with Durham Congregations in Action to make an appeal for additional assistance from the faith community to help specifically families during this cold weather season. So there's a kind of the high level items that the committee's been talking about, and obviously tracking the unsheltered numbers on a monthly basis. And they've been relatively flat over the last few months, about 50 families and 60 to 70 single adults on any given night looking for shelter. So we're continuing to keep our eye on that and continuing to look at what are the gaps in the system and what changes need to be made.
Thanks, Colin.
Mhm.
Anybody have questions? You can raise your hand, a virtual hand, if you have any questions about what Colin shared. All right, hearing none, we'll keep moving. Our next item is Code of Conduct and COC grievance policy updates. This will be presented by Community Development Staff Anthony Henderson, and this will require an HSAC approval.
So good afternoon, everyone. I will be providing an overview of the changes that have been made to our grievance policy. I will start by giving you some context and talk to you about the process that we went through to make the changes, and then review elements of the actual policy, some actual and some excerpts with you, and then seek your approval at the end. So I'm going to share my screen. You may be able to see the slides on the side. That helps me to see them, just so I know where I'm going. So if you can, just ignore them. Let's talk about why we decided to change the policy. We initially had this policy written in 2019. It has not been updated since. It was the policy that set forth the grievance process for the continuum, and also encouraged all of the providers to develop their own policies. That particular policy had sort of broad reach and a lot of general language. It was long and pretty complex. It also allowed for grievances to be filed up to a year after whatever complaint had occurred. There was details on an ombudsman panel which went south pretty quickly because this policy was, I think, approved sometime in late summer or fall of 2019, and then COVID hit in 2020. So I'm not sure how much that ever played out. And it required 3 to 5 people looking at every grievance that made it to the ombudsman panel. And until recently, we were not tracking the outcomes. So these were the primary drivers around why we felt we needed to either revise or rework the policy. So I'll talk to you about now the process that we went through. This was part of a required policy review by HUD following a 2022 audit. So there are other policies. This is one of 3 policies that we are reviewing currently and revising. We put together a small team of our staff along with lived experience work group members, and they either represented or included provider reps who were not part of the lead work group. So we had several of the organizations involved with us as well that we fund. The process involved looking at policies across the U.S. So we looked in places like New York City, Miami-Dade, St. Louis, Detroit, Memphis, Santa Clara County, California, and also locally within the NCCEA's Balance of State, COC. And I got to tell you, the policies were completely varied. There's no real right way to do it. Some of the policies were 3/4 of a page, while others were 6 pages long. And some of them allow for grievances that others don't. So we looked at our own needs, unique needs, and we have come up with what I think you'll be pleased with. In our first meeting, we discussed the existing policy, any challenges with it and questions. We had a second meeting, which was primarily a framework discussion about what the spirit of the policy should offer. And at that time, we officially sort of selected NCCEH as a template to follow. Finally, we held a review meeting after a revision of the policy was conducted or a reworking of the policy was conducted, and entertained thoughts and questions and made any additional changes. So I'll stop here for a second just to see if anybody has any questions. If not, I will move into the components of the new policy. Very good, thank you. So the new policy, again, was modeled after NCCEH. We have adopted an official code of conduct that outlines expectations of the COC members. This code of conduct, I will say there were elements sprinkled within our original policy, but it has been kind of encapsulated up front as a code of conduct with shared expectations. It distinguishes complaints as informal first steps and grievances as formal next steps. It lists types of grievances, reasons for them, and limitations. It offers electronic or mail submissions and provides a timeline for outcomes, as well as alerts that provides for outcomes to be documented. Finally, we were able to reduce the document from 5 pages to 3. So those of you that took this journey with me, thank you for helping us to get to what I believe is a clearer and more focused approach to handling grievances in the COC. The new policy, the code of conduct, is not an excerpt. This is the actual code of conduct listed here on your screen. It has 8 bullets. The next slide will show the other 4. And it just, I will go through these very quickly. We believe that commitment and professionalism are vital to creating and maintaining an effective and efficient COC that benefits everybody involved. And therefore, COC members should represent their clients, agencies, and the COC fairly, ethically, and respectfully, know why we're here in our role in ending homelessness, stay up to date on strategies, and contribute to planning. Respect the confidentiality of sensitive and or private information throughout the COC, including related to our clients. Clarify your professional roles and obligations, exercise reasonable judgment, and take precautions to ensure that conflicts of interest or potential biases do not unjustly affect the people we serve. Consult with and refer to and or cooperate with each other and with other institutions to the extent needed to serve the best interests of our clients. Resolve conflicts proactively and responsibly, and abide by the governing documents and other policies of the COC. So this is the actual code of conduct that's listed up front in the policy. The next slide is a summary of the types of grievances that we will allow for at this point. They are grievances that are filed by program participants who are always encouraged at this point to use a provider's internal process. They may also appeal internally or file with the lead agency. Typically, grievances will involve COC funded programs and resolve within 30 days. And if they don't, then we will add 30 more days if the extension is justifiable. I also want to say that although grievances will typically involve COC funded programs, we do allow for grievances against members of the COC, whether we fund them or not. It's just that the results of the outcomes may be more limited, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The second type of grievance would be a COC member filing against another member when they have violated the code of conduct, and that will activate involvement by the lead agency. When the lead agency cannot resolve the grievance within 30 days, it may be referred to the HSAC chair or designee, and it will allow an additional 45 days to come to resolution. The final type of grievance would be a complaint against the lead agency, and those may be filed directly with the chair of HSAC. The chair or designee and 2 HSAC members will review and resolve the grievance within 45 days. We are also updating the grievance form by January 1st. That will follow the flow of this policy. The next slide, I only have a couple more. The new policy, there are just a couple of limitations. The HSAC will only become involved in grievances that are unresolved related to the code of conduct as outlined above. And this policy does not apply to annual funding competitions or the coordinated entry system. Those systems and competitions will have grievance and appeals procedures outlined in their specific policies. The last slide, I believe, is, second to last slide. It's just how to file. They can file electronic or in writing. The in writing will come to here, to our community development address in City Hall. That mail is checked weekly or more frequently, and the grievance will be forwarded to the appropriate person right away. If that is the chair of the HSAC or whatever. Other than that, if it's filed electronically, it comes to us immediately and gets forwarded immediately if it's for someone that is not directly in our office. Lastly, the policy should be publicly posted in an area within all of our members where staff work with people experiencing homelessness who receive services from the Durham COC. The policies are also to be discussed and acknowledged upon participant intake, and copies are to be maintained in participant files. So that is a little bit about our new policy and how we got here. I will defer to my colleagues for seeking approval or take any questions that exist.
Thanks, Anthony, for that presentation. Does anyone have questions
That's awesome. I hope that means we did a good job.
That's what it sounds like. So Anthony, we're looking for a motion to both approve the new code of conduct and COC grievance policy. Is that correct?
Yes, it is the same document. So it's
Okay.
the official title is Code of Conduct and
I see.
Grievance Policy.
Okay. Okay. So if I'm not seeing any hands or questions in the chat, floor is open for a motion to adopt the code of conduct.
I move to adopt the code of conduct. This is Sharita. I'm sorry I'm late, guys. Had patience.
Thanks, Sharita. We're glad you're here.
I second that emotion.
Thanks.
It
We've got
sound
a
like a song.
wonderful. Thank you, Angela, for that second. Please vote in the chat if you're an HSAC member, yes, no, or abstain. Yes, thank you so much for this work and for those members that supported this work. All right, it looks like the motion was approved. Great work. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Anthony, for that great presentation.
Thank you.
All right, a reminder again in the chat, if you came in during that presentation, please sign in today. That link is in the chat for you. Our next item on the agenda is HTAC committee involvement survey feedback discussion. So in our last meeting, we did a little survey about folks' interests or potential barriers to joining committees. And Melissa from Community Development is going to follow up with us today on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hold on. This presentation open. All right. Can everyone see that? Perfect. All right. So like Eliza said, during the November 2023 HSAC meeting, we requested feedback on a survey involving standing committee involvement and potential barriers that our HSAC and COC members experience that may be hindering some participation in some of our standing. We had a total of 18 responses to that survey. 17 of those were from our HSAC members and one was from a COC member. Some of the common themes that we saw for barriers to attending involved scheduling conflicts. So people said they weren't available on the days that we currently hold committee meetings. Another potential theme was too much of a time commitment. People were worried about committing not only to the regularly scheduled meetings, but if there was additional work that those committees do, there's some additional time commitments that are assumed with that as well. And then finally, there was also some common theme around being unsure of the work being done, or even just uncertainty about what those committees do, how to be involved in them, all of that. So my goal for today's presentation is to kind of help rectify some of those things. So if it's a lack of understanding what the committees do, we'll definitely go over the purpose and structure of all of the different committees, and then also go over some potential options for scheduling for future meetings and all of that. So it's written into the governance charter that 3 standing committees will function alongside the full HSAC to further the work of the COC. So those committees are the Executive Committee, the Policy and Planning Committee, and then the Performance Management Committee. The committee may also elect to create additional work groups or subcommittees to work on large items that cannot be completed during a regularly scheduled meeting. So that could be maybe if there's a policy update that needs to happen and there's not enough time during a meeting to get that done, then we would do that within a work group that's outside of those standing committees. The purpose of the Executive Committee is to oversee the development and implementation of policies and procedures related to the structure and functioning of the COC and the HSAC. The Exec Committee is comprised of the HSAC chair, the vice chair, the secretary, and all of the standing committee chairs. So the exec committee is the only one of the standing committees that you won't see any COC liaisons on, and we won't typically accept additional members to the exec committee. It's just the voting members are made up of just our executive committee of the HSAC. That being said, anyone is still invited to attend the exec committee meeting because that is another public meeting, and there are items during the exec committee that we'll go over that, members of our COC would definitely be interested in. There's a lot of planning that happens in the exec committee meetings that lead to larger discussions in the full HSAC meeting. So it's definitely a good meeting to attend if you want to understand larger agenda items come from when we do the full HSAC. The purpose of the Policy and Planning Committee is to work in collaboration with the lead agency to develop strategic priorities and policies for the improvement of COC performance, and to advise local officials, policymakers, and funders of homeless services policies, strategic objectives, and priorities related to the homeless system in Durham. The Policy and Planning Committee meets monthly on the second Monday of every month from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. I will at the very end send everyone a link to how to register for all of these meetings. So if anyone's interested in registering, you will have access to all of that at the end as well. The Performance Management Committee is set to review standards for the delivery of homeless services and for data management related to homeless populations and services. They also evaluate the implementation of COC policies and procedures, and they provide guidance to the HSAC regarding funding recommendations. So whenever we have a funding recommendation for a NOFO, the collaborative application, all of those funding recommendations typically go through our Performance Management Committee before they reach the full HSAC. The Performance Management Committee meets on the second Thursday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Now, each of these different committees, with the exception of the exec committee, are made up of HSAC members and COC liaisons. So it's currently written into our governance charter that no more than one third of each standing committee can be made up of COC liaisons. So this is definitely something that the HSAC can choose to amend in a future meeting. So if HSAC decides, hey, we want additional opportunities for COC liaisons to be a part of the standing committee, that's something that HSAC could discuss, or if they wanted fewer COC liaisons, that sort of thing. So that is something that's not necessarily set in stone, but we currently have it written in that 1/3 of the standing committees can make up COC liaisons. So this is a full COC meeting, so all of our COC members who are on the call, if you're a COC member, you are eligible to participate as a COC liaison on the Performance Management or the Policy and Planning Committee. Just remember that it is really important that you renew your membership every year. So you have to renew your membership once a year, and the next renewal is scheduled for January. So I would keep an eye out for your emails because we're expected to send an update for renewing COC memberships in January. Like the full HSAC, standing committees have regular items to approve monthly. It's this reason that, we are constantly bringing up the importance of attending these meetings. And, whenever you're not able to attend, we ask that you submit excused absences. And the biggest reason for that is because whenever we don't meet a quorum, whether that be in HSAC or in any of these standing committee meetings, we're unable to vote on items. So, while we are encouraging everyone to participate as much as they can in these standing committees, we do want to emphasize the importance of actually being able to attend those meetings, because if we don't get to a quorum, we won't be able to vote on items on that day of the meeting. Some items may require additional work. I think I mentioned this earlier. So sometimes if we have policies or things like that, we'll have like a work group or a subcommittee that will help with additional items. And that's actually exactly what happened with the grievance policy that was just approved. This was something that went to Policy and Planning. It required additional work. So Anthony worked to solicit some additional volunteers, and we were able to get additional feedback to get that policy passed. Now, while I say that some standing committees will have additional work groups and additional meetings outside of the regularly scheduled ones, that additional work and those additional meetings are not required of our standing committee meetings. If you agree to participate in a work group discussion or a subcommittee out of policy and planning or performance management, it is completely voluntary. You are not like required to do that additional work if that's something that someone is worried about in terms of additional time commitment. In terms of the dates of when these regular meetings occur, they're not set in stone. So members of each committee can vote to change the regularly scheduled meeting time for the next year. So the HSAC calendar year always begins in August, and then we end in June. And then typically we don't have any meetings in July of every year. So the way it would work this year, for example, is when we get closer to the end of the spring, if the full HSAC membership wants to consider a new meeting time for next year's full HSAC meetings, you know, our membership is well in the right to request a different day and vote on a different day. Same thing with our standing committee. So if policy and planning or performance management decide that another day of the week would be better each month for their meetings, we can definitely consider schedule changes for the next year. So just keep that in mind. It is, you know, if it's an issue of you want to attend these meetings, but they just don't fall on the right day for you, you know, you can definitely bring that up in one of our later meetings in the year so that we can consider additional possibilities for schedule changes. The only thing with that is just remember that it will require a majority vote of each member of that committee in order for us to move or change the regularly scheduled date. So I've gone over all this information about the different standing committees, and then of course the scheduling involved in that and all of that. But I want you guys to know how to easily be able to join these committees. When it comes to becoming a member of a standing committee, it's really simple. All you have to do is email me and let me know that you're interested in becoming a member of a committee. And this is specifically to HSAC members. So all of our HSAC members who are on this call, if you're interested in joining policy and planning or performance management, you can just send me an email and then let me know which committee it is that you'd like to join. And then what I will do is I'll send that request over to the chair of that committee. And then we'll make sure that you get added to all of the calendar invitations and all of the meeting reminders for that meeting. We also have COC members on the call. So if you are a COC member and you're interested in participating on one of the committees as a COC liaison, all you have to do is submit a COC liaison form through Smartsheet. So I do have the Smartsheet link here, and I will link it after the presentation as well. Now, the only thing about the COC liaison positions on each of the standing committees is that we can only have 1/3 of the voting portion of the committee made up of COC liaisons. So it may be that the committee that you want to join doesn't have an open position, but you can still submit a request to be considered as a COC liaison, because if a vacancy does pop up, we'll be sure to notify you and ask if you're still interested. And then we'll have that committee vote in terms of who will fill that seat for a COC liaison. Now, all standing committee meetings and our HSAC meeting are all listed as public meetings, so anyone can attend. So even if you're not a COC member or HSAC member and you're on this call, you are welcome to join any of these calls and participate in discussions. Anyone from the community is welcome to submit a public comment as well. So if there are items that are on an agenda that there aren't any items, I'm sorry, on the agenda that you'd like to comment on, but there is an item that you want the HSAC to hear or that you want policy and planning to consider, you can submit a public comment request form at any time for any of our meetings, and you'll have 2 minutes to present that public comment live on the call. So all of these links will be available on the presentation when we post it publicly, and I'll be sure to send that COC liaison form at the end too. I did go over a lot of information, and I wanted to make sure that everyone had all of the reference material so that you know where a lot of this language is coming from. So I've included links to our HSAC page, our subcommittee page, as well as the governance charter, the interlocal agreement, and then all of the other policy documents that I mentioned in the presentation so far. I think that's everything. Are there any questions? I know I went over a lot in a very short amount of time.
I always think of silence as a good thing.
Yeah. Russ says that was clear and helpful. Thank you. Yes, Melissa, thank you so much. I had one quick follow-up just to make sure I heard correctly. If I'm somebody who am currently interested in joining a committee meeting, but the time doesn't work for me, as we get toward the end of the year, you said to reach out. Would they reach out to you or the chairs of those committees?
So they could reach out to me. They could also just discuss it during one of the meetings.
Got it.
I think that it's normal for us, Eliza, if I remember from last year as well, we'll talk about the schedule for the next HSAC year. So when that conversation comes up, that's definitely like a good time to mention, hey, can we consider other days? So we can definitely talk about that when we get closer to the end of the HSAC year. But of course, like any HSAC member or standing committee member is welcome to bring up the conversation a little bit earlier if they have like additional scheduling needs. I know some people plan out their schedules 6 months in advance, so it really just depends on when's the best time for our membership. Oh, in terms of process for this, if we do consider changing dates, it'll begin with that membership, right? So if the request is that we change the date for policy and planning, I'll first go to our current policy and planning membership, ask them for additional days that work for them, and then I'll use that as a poll or a survey for additional people who are interested in joining. Because while we do want to encourage new people to join these committees, we also don't want to lose any current membership who are, you know, doing a lot of really good work in these committees. So I do want to be transparent with that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think that also makes me think that if folks are interested, it might be worth an earlier conversation with the chairs so that they're aware, and they might be able to have conversations just about time as well, so that it doesn't feel like those things are disconnected. So I would just encourage folks then to reach out to the chairs so that we can just kind of understand that whole picture better rather than just understanding that we're prioritizing current members. So great. Thank you so much, Melissa. I appreciate the update. That was really helpful. And hopefully it feels like folks who participated in the survey that we're sharing that information and then following up with helpful pieces of information to answer some of the questions that came up. All right. So our next item is a Housing First evaluation update, and that will be from Jonathan Crooms, and this is an information only item.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Jonathan Crooms, current chair of the Performance Management Subcommittee. It is great as always to be with you all this afternoon. I'm going to give a little bit of an update on the Housing First evaluation, which we'll be working on really the first third of 2024. So you all know that we have usually throughout the year about 3 different funding competitions. And the one that I consider to be the biggest is the collaborative application, or the COC application, which gets done every year in the fall. And as part of that application, we are required to do a Housing First evaluation. And so in order to do that this year, we're actually going to do our own intra COC evaluation. Last year, you all may remember that we did a cross COC evaluation with Wake and Orange County, and some of that got used in the collaborative application. This year, we're just doing it internally within our own COC. And what that's going to look like is, come the beginning of 2024, we will gather as a group and receive some training from the Community Development Department. And then we'll break up into groups and be assigned a project or two in which to complete the Housing First evaluation. We currently have 12 volunteers who have agreed to participate, and I want to go ahead and thank those folks ahead of time for the time and the effort that they're going to give here in the new year. We also could use some additional folks. It's always good to have extra volunteers, and so if anyone here is interested, whether they be an HSAC member or a COC member, in joining the evaluation, please contact either myself or Lloyd Schmeidler. The main criteria here to be aware of is really if you want to do this, you really need to not have a conflict of interest. It is a great opportunity in doing this, not only to contribute to the work of the COC, but you'll learn a bit more about the funding process, as well as work with the continually challenging idea of Housing First, really get a grasp on that and how well we're doing that as a COC. So that's where we're at. And again, for those of you who've agreed to participate, look forward to working with you in the new year on this. And again, we could use some more folks who to sign up and work with us. And with that, I'll stop there and take any questions that anyone might have. Well, no questions, Madam Chair. I send it back to you.
Thank you. And I was working on a little message for the chat. So, oops, I put in two of the same emails. I meant to put in Jonathan's email for this.
That's okay. I'll put it in for you right now.
Thank you. That's why I was looking away for a minute. I appreciate it. And then Sharita also dropped her email in the chat because she's the policy and planning chair, and Jonathan is our performance management chair. So you'll have both of those emails for our previous item as well. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that update and for putting your email in correctly for me.
No, thank you.
Okay, we're moving right along. Our next item is PIC count planning update, and Shantae Addison from Housing for New Hope will be sharing with us, and this is an information only item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So, just a brief overview of what Point in Time is. It is just to provide a snapshot of homelessness in the Durham continuum of care. And this includes both the city proper and the county of Durham. And this snapshot helps the COC understand how many people are experiencing homelessness on a single night. HUD recommends the last week of January because typically this is the coldest time of the year. And if you are experiencing unsheltered homelessness, it is likely that you have exhausted all of the resources that are available to you. So our point in time count is going to be Wednesday, January 24th. We will begin at the Durham Main Library that night, and then we will deploy all of our volunteers beginning at 8 o'clock. We anticipate the actual count to be over around midnight or earlier for some. This year's focus areas, we are, of course, going to work on the count for the unsheltered population. So our unsheltered neighbors, we will be going out into encampments. And we are also committed to having stations at the local area hospitals. That's Duke University Hospital, Duke Regional, and the VA Hospital. So we have confirmed the VA Hospital. That's good news for us. We are still working on Duke University Hospital and Duke Regional Hospital. We are also committed to incorporating a youth count this year. And the difference between the youth count and a regular unsheltered neighbors count is that oftentimes youth aren't considered category 1 or category 4 homeless through the HUD definition, but they use like McKinney-Vento definition. We still want to know what our youth are experiencing, and youth go from ages 16 to 24. We want to know about their housing instability and what types of resources we can funnel into this community to help support them and to help them become housing stable as well. Additionally to the unsheltered count and the youth count, we are working with the LGBTQ Center to make sure that we are very inclusive of that population and providing safe spaces where they can show up and can be counted if they are experiencing homelessness and or housing instability. The last focus area are the families. We know that in the past year, our family homelessness has increased tremendously. So we want to make sure that we have a space where we can count families that are sleeping, particularly in cars, to have a space for them to show up on that evening so that we can do an accurate count and make sure that we are funneling those services back to them and giving them information that they may not otherwise be connected to. The last part of this count are those people in emergency shelters or transitional housing programs. And those numbers are just collected through the Homeless Management Information System. And those numbers are reported on the night of the 24th. So again, we're going to begin at the Durham County Main Library at 7 p.m. on January 24th. We are deploying teams beginning at 8. We currently have about 85 active encampments, and I'm going to drop the street outreach email in here so that if you all know of any encampments, please send them to our street outreach team members so they can check those sites and make sure that they are active. The 30 days leading up to the point in time count, they will be rechecking sites to make sure that they're still active. The goal is to make sure that when we go out there, we're going to sites that we know have people in them. They're not abandoned sites. And we know that our neighbors are very transient, so they may not be there the night of the count, but we do want to make sure these are still active sites and not sites that have been cleaned up or our neighbors have moved from. As a thank you to our neighbors for participating in this unsheltered survey, we are providing winter essentials kits. In those kits, they will include basic hygiene supplies such as toothbrushes, toothpaste, shower wipes. We will also provide non-perishable food items, and we do try to be very inclusive for those who don't eat pork. So we'll have cans of like pork and beans and those without pork. So I don't know if it's called beef and beans or what it's called, but we have those and they're pop top cans so that they're easily usable for our neighbors. We will be using the Counting Us app. So if you've participated in past counts, you should be familiar with that app. We are continuing to use that app as our tool to administer the surveys this year. All volunteers are going to be required to participate in a training. If you have participated in a count in Durham, you may take a recorded training, and these recorded trainings will be available after the Christmas holiday. If you have never participated in a count in Durham, you will be required to take a live training, and those trainings will begin in January. The last part of what we're doing this year, we're doing service-based counts. We will have 4 service-based counts this year, and service-based counts are counts that happen typically sometime within that week of point in time, and they're at community events or other places that may be hosting some type of like food service or it just may be an agency. You don't necessarily have to be hosting an event. But this year we will be doing the breakfast meal at Urban Ministries of Durham the day after. Yes, the day after Pit Count, that Thursday morning. We will do a meal at St. Joseph's Episcopal Church the Friday after Pit Count. And then we do surveys at the Free Store at Trinity United Methodist Church on the Tuesday, the following week after Pit Count. And so that will wrap up all of our surveys. And all of the surveys still go back to where this person was sleeping on the night of January 24th. The last service-based count is going to be youth-focused. We are targeting populations 18 through 24. Our goal is to have it at the downtown skate park and provide light refreshments and winter essentials kits there. Again, we know that youth experiencing homelessness and or housing instability may not fit the category 104 definition, but we want to be as inclusive. We're committed to being inclusive of all the populations that are experiencing housing instability this year. And we're hopeful that we'll get the right amount of surveys and we'll be able to connect our neighbors to the right resources, and not just connecting them to the right resources, but generating more resources as they're needed in the Durham community. And that is all I have. If you have any questions, I do see some comments in the chat about it, but I am going to go ahead and drop the email in the chat for if you have any sites, if you have any neighbors that you see that are outside and you want to connect them to our street outreach team, please contact street outreach at housingfornewhope.org.
Thanks so much, Shantae. I'm seeing your hand, Sharita.
Hi, Shantae. Thanks for your presentation. I did have some questions after we reviewed this at the policy and planning meeting on Monday. I know that there is a mention of doing something different for the youth, specifically having like a warming center and targeting the skate park as a area, and also trying to determine like what kinds of things, how would a youth kit be different from an adult kit per se? And so I was trying just to find out if Housing for New Hope needs any assistance gathering those materials. Is there a way that if there were organizations in the community that wanted to support that effort, that they could actually step up and provide some additional support around the youth plans for this year's point in time count?
So a couple of things to that. For the 18 to 24 population, the Winter Essentials Kit is not going to be different than the regular adult Winter Essentials Kits. However, Paul Grabowski with Life Skills, he did suggest that population is really into hoodies and blankets. And so that may be something that we are going to solicit in addition to just the regular winter essentials kit. And we're looking at about 20 to 30 for that particular group. For those families with children, small children, we're considering just basic hygiene supplies for children and maybe some school supplies. We are trying to figure out like exactly what those things look like depending on the need. And just having an actual list for those items, and maybe like a child-friendly activity, like a coloring book. And yes, we do need assistance in gathering those donations. And I also forgot to mention that sign up for the volunteers will be happening this week. We will be using the Counting Us app to do our volunteer registration. So we're just waiting on them to update that information. And as soon as that information is updated, we will start making the ask for volunteers for the count.
Thank you. I was just, my youth ministry is very interested in doing, supporting youth in the community. And so I was just trying to find out if there were some tangible needs that we could meet, that my youth group, our youth ministry could meet and help for that day. So, if you find that there's something that you need, could you just reach out to me and let me know so that I can get it to them, preferably before January, just so we can start getting our mind, wrapping our mind around.
Absolutely. We're reaching out to the agencies that are working with the youth particularly. And the next step is we're going to ask them to just list out exactly what it is, because, you know, school supplies could be composition notebooks, it could be pencils or pens or erasers. We just kind of need to know what the majority of the need is, and if they need book bags or anything like that. So we're just going to have our groups list those out. And as soon as I get that information, I am happy to share that with you.
Great. Thanks for the info also on the upcoming link. That was going to be my question. How do we sign up? So we'll be on the lookout for that. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for a thorough presentation, Shante. We really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I'm hopeful that several folks here will sign up. I know I went for the first time last year, and it was a really well put together event and a great opportunity for someone like me who is not doing this work day to day. So I encourage folks, particularly those who may not be in this work, particularly in the direct service work, to take this opportunity. Housing for New Hope does a really good job of putting this together. So thank you. Yes, Heidi.
Thanks. I also just wanted to emphasize what a great job I think Housing for New Hope is doing and has done, did do last year in organizing this very, very important event for our community. And thank you, Shante, for the presentation today and for all the hard work I know you all are putting into this. It really is a very critical event and night for our community, and you also do a great job of getting volunteers, so good for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to having you all participate again this year.
Great. I see thumbs up. Heidi's in. While Shante was presenting, I saw Victoria dropped a note in the chat about how would we be able to see minutes from previous meetings. So I'm wondering if someone from community development can help find or help us answer that question.
I think Melissa has helped her.
Oh, okay. A link has been sent. Perfect. Great. I'm glad that was resolved on the back end. Well, we've reached the end of our meeting, and we have time for announcements now. So if anybody, whether HSAC or COC members, have announcements for the good of the group, please raise your hand or drop it in the chat, and we have space to share those.
This is Heidi again. When is the memorial for homeless people who have died during the year?
Yes, I'm so glad that you asked. The memorial is coming up on December 21st. It's in the Farmers Market Pavilion at 6 p.m. I believe the email that went out on what day was it? On December 6th, had the flyer included, but just to share that again, it's December 21st. Yes, thank you, Alicia. In the chat, Alicia just put it December 21st, 6 p.m., the Farmers Market Pavilion. We'd love for anyone to attend. And I've sent out some information about this to our business community as well, and hopeful that some of those folks will attend, as well as neighborhoods that are in Durham. Any other announcements? Okay, well, I'll end with a few reminders. We heard that it would be helpful to have upcoming meetings as reminders on the agenda. So at the bottom of your agenda, you'll find when the next HSAC meeting is, which is in the new year, January 17th, 2024. Our next executive committee is January 5th. Policy planning is January 8th. And performance management is January 11th. Melissa, if you're able to drop in the chat the link for folks where they'd be able to find the sign up for those meetings, that would be great. You also find the reminder again about Night of Remembrance on the 21st. And there's a county appointed HSAC seat available that is for the corporate private sector. So if there are folks that you know that might be interested, please share that link. All right, so we've reached the end of our meeting, just making sure nothing else is in the chat. Okay. Oh, okay. So Melissa had to leave. So if anyone else can drop that in the chat, that'd be great. If not, we'll find a way to make sure that gets shared out.
What did you need dropped in there, Eliza?
Sure. Is there a location where if someone was interested in attending one of the upcoming either exec policy planning or performance management meetings,
Mm-hmm.
a link where they would be able to go ahead and sign up for that so they could put it in their calendar?
Yeah, they should all be posted on the city boards and commissions website.
Okay.
So give me a minute. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay. Thanks so much, Colin, for dropping that in the chat.
It doesn't look like the January has been put up there yet, but if you look at what I put in there, it does have policy and planning, performance management, and HSAC all listed.
Great. Thank you so much. So if you're somebody who is not on one of those committees and you might be interested in attending a meeting, you can click on that link and keep track of when those meetings are ahead of time and get them into your calendars. So just wanted to have that there for you all. So I will open the floor for a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thanks,
I will second that motion, and happy holidays for me too.
Thanks, Helen. Yes, happy holidays to everybody. Happy New Year. I hope everyone finds time to rest, and I hope to see you all on December 21st at the Homeless Night of Remembrance. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.